Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Hmm.
Today we're going to be tackling a topic that I think is on a lot of people's minds these days.
Yeah.
And it's this whole idea of managing agile teams in a remote or a hybrid world.
Right.
Think about it. We used to be all crowded around a whiteboard, with
Yeah.
markers in hand. And now we're brainstorming on Zoom
Right.
and we're, trying to coordinate stand-up meetings across like 3 different time zones.
Totally different ball
Yeah, it's
game.
a whole new ball game.
It is.
And so to help us navigate this shift, we've got a fantastic article that we're going to be diving into today,
Okay.
all about making Agile not just survive, but thrive
Right.
in these kind of remote and hybrid work setups.
Absolutely.
So buckle up, because I think we're going to uncover some really game-changing insights today.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things that this article points out right off the bat is that, you
Okay.
know, traditional agile methodologies were designed for teams that were sharing the same physical space. You're all in the same room. You can, quickly gather around a whiteboard or whatever.
Exactly.
But with this rise of remote work,
Yeah.
we can't just abandon Agile altogether.
Right.
It means we have to adapt it. We have to kind of evolve the process.
Okay, I love that idea of evolution.
Yeah.
But what does adapting Agile practices actually look like
Yeah.
in practice?
So let's take something like the daily stand-up meeting,
Okay.
which is, a cornerstone of Agile.
Yeah.
Traditionally, everybody huddles together. You have your quick status updates.
Right.
But if you've got a team that's scattered, across continents,
Yeah.
that's just not feasible.
Right.
So instead of doing that,
Yeah.
you might use a digital tool like Slack,
Okay.
where each team member can just post a brief update asynchronously,
Oh, interesting.
maybe even with, a fun emoji or a GIF to keep things lighthearted.
I love that.
But it's the same principle, just adjusted to that remote environment.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's not about like replicating the in-person experience online.
Right.
It's about using different tools to achieve the same goals.
Exactly. And this adaptation needs to apply to other Agile ceremonies as well.
Right.
Like sprint reviews where the team demonstrates their work and gathers feedback.
Yeah.
That can easily be done virtually using, video conferencing platforms
That's a great point.
with screen sharing capabilities and things like that.
Yeah. The article also talks a lot about iterative processes as being like crucial for adapting Agile to remote work.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yeah. So, just think of it as a cycle of continuous improvement.
Okay.
Try something out, you gather feedback, you make adjustments,
Yeah.
and then you try again. It's all about learning and adapting as you go.
So how do teams put this iterative process into action in like a real world setting?
Yeah.
It's in a remote environment.
Imagine a team that's using an online project management tool like Jira.
Okay.
They complete a sprint, and then they hold a virtual retrospective. And during this retrospective, team members might use a digital whiteboard to brainstorm what went well,
Mm-hmm.
what could be improved, and, what actions they're going to take for the next sprint.
Right.
And the key here is that these retrospectives aren't just one-off events.
Yeah.
They happen regularly, allowing for this continuous adaptation based on real-time data.
So it's like this constant feedback loop,
Exactly.
always striving to refine the process.
Absolutely.
Now, the article also highlights that all of these adjustments we're talking about,
Yeah.
they need to be linked back to business outcomes.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, it means making sure that all these adaptations we're making to our Agile practices
Right.
ultimately contribute to achieving the organization's goals.
So we're not just going through the motions.
Exactly. We're using Agile to deliver tangible results even in a remote setting.
Right. It's about staying aligned with that bigger picture,
Absolutely.
even when the way of work is completely different. And speaking of staying connected, the article also really emphasizes the importance of communication.
Oh, absolutely. Communication is key.
For remote Agile teams, can you break down some of the key takeaways in that area?
Sure. One of the most crucial distinctions the article makes is between synchronous and asynchronous communication.
Okay.
So synchronous communication, as the name suggests, is happening in real time.
Right.
So think video calls, instant messaging, even quick phone calls.
Got it.
And it's essential for those moments when you need immediate feedback,
Right.
quick decision making, or just that feeling of real-time connection with your team.
So those virtual stand-up meetings we talked about earlier
Exactly.
would fall under that synchronous communication umbrella.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So then what's asynchronous communication?
So asynchronous communication happens outside of real time.
Okay.
Things like emails, project management boards, shared documents,
Right.
anything where you don't need an immediate response. And this is really a game changer for remote teams that are spread across different time zones
Yeah, that makes sense.
because it allows everyone to contribute on their own schedule.
So in a practical sense, what are some tools that teams can use to manage both synchronous and asynchronous communication effectively?
Well, for synchronous communication, you've got platforms like Slack, Zoom, Microsoft
Yes, those are
Teams.
like the staples now.
They've become the go-tos.
Yeah.
They offer a mix of, instant messaging, video conferencing, screen
Like
sharing.
all those things you need for that real-time collaboration.
Exactly.
And what about for asynchronous communication?
So for that, project management tools like Jira and Miro are incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Jira is fantastic for tracking tasks, managing sprints, keeping everyone aligned on project progress.
Right.
Miro, on the other hand, offers this virtual whiteboard
Oh, cool.
where teams can brainstorm, share ideas, visually collaborate on projects asynchronously.
So it sounds like finding the right balance between these two types of communication is really key
Yes,
for remote agile teams.
it is.
Because if you have too much synchronous communication,
Yeah,
you're just constantly bombarded with meetings and messages.
and you can get burned out,
Exactly.
but too much asynchronous and you risk losing that sense of connection.
Yeah, that immediacy.
Yeah, you need that immediacy sometimes.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Exactly.
where both types of communication are working together.
Yeah, where they complement each other.
Creating that flow of information that keeps everybody on the same page.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with
Yeah.
in a remote environment is maintaining that sense of team cohesion. That
Mhm.
feeling of camaraderie that you get from being in the same physical space.
Right.
The article talks about this too, like maintaining team morale
Yes.
in a remote agile setting.
It is so critical. And the article really dives into the challenges of that.
Yeah.
Because when we're physically separated, it's easy to feel isolated.
Yeah.
You miss out on those spontaneous interactions that build bonds and trust.
Right. All those water cooler chats,
Exactly.
the impromptu brainstorming session.
Yeah, or even just grabbing lunch together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those all contribute to a sense of team spirit that can be hard to replicate online.
Absolutely. And without that, team morale can really take a hit,
Right.
which then impacts productivity and overall well-being.
Well, we don't want that.
No, we don't. But the good news is there are strategies to combat this.
Okay.
And the article highlights a few key approaches.
I am all ears. Let's dive into those strategies and see how remote agile teams can create that sense of connection,
Let's do it.
even when they're miles apart. But before we do that, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to unpack these strategies and more.
Sounds good.
Stay with us. Welcome back. So before the break, we were just starting to get into some ways that remote agile teams can maintain that all-important team spirit, even when they're physically separated. So let's jump right into those strategies.
Okay.
What are some of the things that the article suggests?
Well, one really powerful approach is to be intentional about creating opportunities for virtual team building.
Okay.
So think things like online games, virtual coffee breaks, or even just dedicating, a few minutes at the start of a meeting for some casual, non-work related conversation.
So it's like deliberately carving out space for those informal interactions that often happen organically in a physical office.
Exactly.
What else can teams do?
Another key strategy is implementing recognition and reward systems. Because, in a remote setting, it's easy for individual contributions to kind of go unnoticed.
Yeah, you don't have that everyday face-to-face interaction.
Exactly. So it's really important to make an effort to celebrate achievements no matter how small they might seem.
Okay.
It could be a shout out during a virtual meeting, a virtual high five on Slack,
I love it.
or even, a small gift card as a token of appreciation.
Those small gestures can really go a long way
They do.
in making people feel valued and seen,
Oh.
especially when they're working remotely. And the article also talks about flexible work policies
Yes.
as being an important factor in maintaining morale.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. When you trust your team members to manage their own time and workload,
Right.
it shows that you value their autonomy and their well-being.
Right.
And this can be especially beneficial for remote workers who might be juggling, family responsibilities or
Yeah.
dealing with different time zones.
About that trust factor.
It is. And, flexible work arrangements, they not only boost morale,
Yeah.
but they often lead to increased productivity
That makes sense.
because people feel empowered to work when they're most focused and energized.
Like that old adage, work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
But creating this kind of flexible and supportive work environment in a remote setting, it can be tricky.
It can be.
So do you think there's a role for Agile coaches in helping teams navigate these challenges?
Absolutely. Agile coaches can play such a vital role in guiding remote teams, not just in adapting their Agile practices, but also in building a strong team culture
Right.
and fostering those positive dynamics, even when everyone's working from different locations.
So it's like having a dedicated champion
It is.
for team morale and well-being.
Exactly. And that can be so valuable in a remote context.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's kind of shift gears for a moment
Okay.
and go back to the article's focus on continuous improvement in remote Agile settings. So what does that look like in practice?
It's all about embracing the idea that we're always learning
Okay.
and evolving. We need to be constantly looking for ways to refine our processes,
Right.
improve our communication, boost team morale.
And how do we actually do that?
One of the most effective ways is through regular retrospectives.
Okay, so it's like that iterative process we discussed earlier,
It is.
but applied to the overall team function.
Exactly. Retrospectives give the team a chance to come together, reflect on what went well in the previous sprint, identify any areas for improvement, come up with actionable steps to make the next sprint even better.
And these retrospectives, they don't have to be like these long, drawn-out affairs, right?
No, not at all. Even short, focused sessions held regularly, maybe even weekly, can make a big difference.
So it's about making continuous improvement a habit,
It is.
a natural part of the workflow, rather than this like one-time event.
Exactly.
But let's face it, remote work, for all of its benefits, it comes with its share of challenges too.
It does.
And the article doesn't shy away from that.
No, it doesn't. One of the biggest hurdles is the potential for miscommunication and misunderstandings.
Oh, yeah.
When you're not face-to-face, it's easier for things to get lost in translation.
For sure. Like a quick comment in a chat message can be interpreted so differently
Right.
than if it were said in person.
Exactly, because you're missing those nonverbal cues.
Right. You don't see someone's facial expression.
Yeah, you don't see their body language.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So how can remote teams kind of mitigate these communication breakdowns?
Well, it comes back to being extra mindful about how we communicate.
Okay.
Being clear, concise, and using visual aids whenever possible can help tremendously.
Those are good tips.
And don't be afraid to over-communicate.
Okay.
It's always better to err on the side of providing too much context than not enough.
So we have to be more deliberate, more intentional
Yes.
about our communication when we're working remotely.
Absolutely.
It takes more effort, but it's crucial to avoid those misunderstandings.
It is.
They can easily derail a project.
Exactly. And it's also important to be patient with each other.
That's a good point.
We're all adjusting to this new way of working, and there are bound to be bumps along the road.
We're all learning as we go.
We are.
This whole conversation about remote agile, it's got me thinking
Yeah.
about how these principles of flexibility, adaptability, and continuous improvement,
Uh-huh.
they could be applied to so many other aspects of our lives,
Right.
not just our work.
That's such a great point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think remote work and the adaptations that it requires
Yeah.
might actually be pushing us to become more agile in a broader sense.
It's challenging us to rethink
It is.
how we communicate, collaborate, and approach problem solving.
In all areas of our lives.
It's like remote work is a forcing function
It is.
for personal and professional growth,
It is.
pushing us to hone those agile skills that are becoming increasingly valuable
Absolutely.
in this world that's constantly changing.
Precisely. And as we embrace these new ways of working and living,
Yeah.
it's so important to remember the human element.
Yes.
Technology can facilitate connection and collaboration,
Uh-huh.
but it's our responsibility to use it in a way that enhances our well-being,
Right.
not detracts from it.
That is such a crucial point because it's easy to get caught up
It is.
in the pursuit of productivity and optimization,
Yes.
but we have to remember that we're human beings, not machines.
Absolutely.
And true agility
Mhm.
should encompass not just our ability to work efficiently,
Right.
but also our capacity for joy, connection, and meaning.
Beautifully said. I love that.
And I think that's the ultimate challenge of Agile in a remote world.
Yeah.
Finding that sweet spot where efficiency and humanity intersect.
I love that.
It's about using these tools and techniques not just to get things done,
Right.
but to create a better, more fulfilling way of living and working.
Absolutely.
And while we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
there's still so much more to explore.
There is. And as we look ahead to the future of Agile and this ever-evolving landscape
Yeah.
of work and life, there are some really fascinating trends emerging that are worth discussing.
Oh, intriguing.
I think so.
Well, we have to save those for another deep dive.
We will.
But for now, we're going to wrap things up here.
Okay.
So thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Agile in a remote world.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been a great conversation.
It has.
And as always, we encourage you to continue the conversation.
Yes.
Share your thoughts,
Yes.
your challenges, your triumphs
Absolutely.
as you navigate this new world of work.
Because we're all in this together.
We are. And together we can create a future where Agile is a force for good,
Mm-hmm.
not just in our workplaces, but in our lives as a whole.
I love that.
Until next time, stay curious, stay adaptable, and stay agile.